Hello, everyone. Eric from Helps here. Hope you can hear me okay. Glad to have you today, July 23rd, 2025, Wednesday. My name's Eric, 74 years old. Been an attorney for 46 years, the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm. What we do is we represent seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay. Number one mission is to help them to stop debt collector harassment. So they don't have to deal with collectors calling them on the phone or sending them demand letters anymore. And our second mission is to educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. So if it's your first time with Helps listening to us, I'd like to welcome you. You can put any questions you have in the chat feature. Don't be bashful about any of your questions. There's never a bad question, okay? And I should know the answer to be able to help you, okay? One thing you're going to find out here is you're going to get right information here on this channel. There's a lot of information on the internet about seniors that owe debt, but unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation, or they leave out information. They might tell you how to pay your debt, but they may never bother to tell you the one thing that's most important. What's that? The fact that your Social Security, your pension, your disability, your VA benefit, your forms of retirement are protected by federal law and state laws. It can't be taken from you, okay? And even if you chose not to pay the debt, there's a way to stop the creditors from harassing you. So if you don't have to go without food or medicine or basics to pay debt you can't afford to pay, okay? And even if you're sued, there's a federal law that protects twice the amount of your federal benefits in your bank account from garnishment, regardless of what other monies are in there or where they came from. So your bank account is protected as well. And your assets are protected under state law, under various state laws, okay? So, and we don't turn anyone away that wants to enroll in Helps. As long as you qualify for a program, you can be enrolled. And we enroll people over the phone. You know, you can call and you can enroll that day if you want. Some people call us 2 or 3 or 4 times and before they enroll. You know, I'll talk about that as we go on today. So put your questions in the chat feature and I'll be able to answer them. So I put on the headline today as a senior with debt. Are you a senior with debt and can't take it anymore? Okay, and if that's you, if you got debt and you can't take it anymore, listen to what we talk about here. Okay, and thanks for all your help. You'll notice that we have a group of people that listen to Helps that talk among themselves. But if you have a question, you can just make a note of it, and I can spot the questions pretty good. So Marion asks, debt collectors, you say they can't go after your house or your vehicle. Eric, you say deposit can't go after your house or your vehicle if they can't pay a debt on credit cards. Yeah, so what if someone were to, okay, first off, I've already explained how your Social Security is protected, and your pension and your disability can't be garnished. They can't go to the Social Security and say, I want your Social Security, or you can't go to your pension. But what about if it gets deposited in your bank account? Well, there's a federal rule went into effect in 2012 that says, you know, if someone were to sue you and get a judgment and they happen to know where you bank and they tried to garnish your bank account, your bank will automatically look at your account, and if they can see that it came from a federal source, okay, like Social Security or VA benefit or federal retirement, then they take that amount you get each month, times it times 2, and they'll protect that sum that's in your checking account to which it's deposited, even if money in the checking account came from some other source. Okay? So if you got 2,000 in Social Security, 4,000 is protected. I talked to a guy earlier today, and he had like $1,500 in Social Security, but then near the end of the conversation, I learned that he had $1,000 in a VA benefit. So that would be $2,500 came from a federal source times 2, 5,000 was protected in his bank account in the event someone were to sue him and get a judgment. Now, does it mean you're going to get sued? You may not. Doesn't matter. Your income's protected. And are they going to take your assets? No. Virtually every state has exemption laws that protect a certain amount of equity in assets, like so much equity in a home, so much equity in a car. household goods, different things. But it's also a fact that it's simply not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to try to go after assets that you might own that might be over and above the exemption for the state where you live. Now, it's theoretically possible, but they don't do it. Now, how do I know? Filed 30 or 40,000 bankruptcies over the last, before I started HELPS in 2012. And then since HELPS been in existence, creditors don't go after non-exempt assets, even if you have some non-exempt equity. So you're not going to worry about losing your home for a lot of different reasons. And we talk about some of those reasons when we have these discussions here on this channel. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat feature. Kat asked, any experience with Chase Bank suing your clients even if you are judgment proof? I can't recall. I'm sure they have. I mean, it's not going to matter if it's Chase Bank or any other bank. If you're judgment proof, you're judgment proof, Kat. They can't take anything from you. If one of our clients gets sued, we send you're gonna get us a copy of the lawsuit. Okay, sometimes you might not, you'll find out you're getting sued. You get an advertisement from from an attorney who files bankruptcy, an advertisement letter, and you'll say, well, "Gee, I'm getting these letters saying I'm being sued. I don't know anything about it." Well, eventually, someone's going to knock on your door and serve you with a summons and complaint. And you're going to get a copy to HELPS for 3 or 4 pages. Then we're going to send a letter to the attorney who sued you, let him know that your income is protected. Okay. And you're not going to go to court. We understand they're going to get a judgment. We're going to call you on the phone, tell you why you don't need to worry. I'm going to send you an email explaining why your income's protected, why you don't need to worry. So it doesn't matter if you're sued or not by Chase or whoever it is. They can't really do anything to you. Okay? You're judgment proof. So, Jeannie, you're talking about a loan modification. I assume it's on your mortgage. Kind of a little too detailed to go on that over this over YouTube Live because there's too many questions to answer. And have asked, we don't help with deferrals, but we can give you some information on that. Okay, that maybe give you a little bit of guidance. We don't helps doesn't give legal advice. We give legal information, but we have a lot of good information. Okay, Rockabilly says she references my daughter, who is also an attorney here at Helps, and she's the brains of the outfit. Honest answer. If you have you ask, just a minute. Let's see here. If you have joint tenancy with rights of supervision, what happens to the liens on your house? Okay, so if you own a home and you have someone else on the title with you, and you own it with joint tenants with survivorship rights, okay, that means you own it together with that other person. And it means if one of you dies, then at your death, the home automatically is in the other person's name. And if that person's name was added on the home before someone got a judgment against you, then if you're the parent and this is your daughter or son, then at your death, the home automatically passes to the child or the children together, however you have it deeded. And if there's a judgment against you, that judgment disappears. See, a judgment can be a lien on a home, but it's only a lien on property that you own. It doesn't list the specific piece of property. It lists, all it does is it's just a judgment lien. And so if you go to sell your property, it would pop up on a title report. But it doesn't, like a mortgage where it lists your specific as a legal description for your property. A judgment lien isn't like that. It's just a court lien, and under the state law, it can be a lien on property that you own. But when you die and you own it with someone else, by operation of law, the property then would go to the other. If it's the type of deed where there's survivorship rights, then it goes to the survivor automatically the instant you die. Therefore, you're up in heaven. You no longer own the home. The property is in this other person's name who's on the title with you, your son or daughter or whoever it is. Now they own the home. Now your judgment is no longer a lien on the home because it's only a lien on the home you own, and you're no longer on earth. You're gone. You don't own the home. The judgment lien disappears. Okay. We have videos that explain that. We also have emails that explain that. Gus says, I'm filing a discovery from one creditor, a lot of fancy legal words. If I make a mistake, can I get in trouble? I don't know how you can get in trouble. I don't know what you're doing. We don't give advice on how to defend a lawsuit. It helps. It's just not what we do. Um, but I doubt there's too many things you could ever do in this area that would really get you in any type of trouble. Okay. So, like I said, the title for today, I don't know if I mentioned, is the seniors with debt and can't take it anymore. So I'm going to talk about, just before I got on the YouTube Live, I talked to a former client of Helps who called. And I think I called him back. He called us. He had enrolled a couple years ago in Helps. He gave us his creditors. We sent cease and desist letters. Everything was fine. And then after a while, he decided, well, I'm not hearing from anyone anymore. I guess I don't need any help from Helps anymore. And so he canceled. So we had to send letters to his creditors to whom that we had sent earlier saying that we no longer represented him. Okay, which is okay. But then now it looks like he was sued. And he called on the phone, and I happened to talk to him today. And that was his words. He couldn't take it anymore. He was so worried. He said he felt like this morning he just put his head in his hands and wanted to throw up. And I told him, you don't need to worry. Okay. He'd gotten a couple letters from attorneys telling him that he had been sued. He lived in Pennsylvania. And these were advertisements from letters from attorneys, like I said earlier, that talking to him about bankruptcy. Now, he really couldn't file bankruptcy because he was buying a home. He had too much equity in his home. I told him they're not going to take your home. I told him that. I said he didn't have any kids, but he had one of his siblings. He could leave his home. I said you could consider adding your sibling's home to you as a joint owner. You could do that now, and that means when you pass on, the home will go to your sister or brother, whoever it was, and they'll get the home. And this judgment won't attach to the home. They'll get all the equity out of the home. And I told him, I said, they can't touch your Social Security. They can't touch your pension. It's protected. It's protected in your bank account, like I explained earlier. And he had enough equity in the home. I told him, I said, listen, you might want to look at a reverse mortgage. And he said, no, I don't want to do that. And I hear that a lot. And I told him, I said, I hear that a lot from people. I said, but you got to give me a second to explain it. I don't sell reverse mortgages. I want to be real clear on that. I really don't care if anyone gets a reverse mortgage. But where a reverse mortgage can make sense, I want to tell people about it. And in his case, he had $1,000 house payment and property taxes. If he got a reverse mortgage, he'd have about an extra $1,000 in his pocket every month. It would make all the difference in the world. Okay, and he could probably qualify to get a reverse mortgage. So I sent him an email from Helps that talks about that with a link to a couple videos. We refer people to a particular guy up in Michigan that does reverse mortgages, but you could see anyone. Doesn't matter. We don't have any financial arrangements with any company that does reverse mortgages, but we want to tell seniors where they make sense. And so, and then he re-enrolled in Helps. Once in a while people will cancel helps. A lot of them call. I don't want to say the majority, but maybe it is. We'll call back 6 months, 5 months later, whatever. Creditors are starting to call them again, and they don't want to deal with it, and so they re-enroll, and we just pick up where we left off from. So we re-enrolled him with helps, and the thing I told him, I said, listen, I don't want you sitting at home, sitting on the floor with your head in your hands, stressed and worried about this. They can't do anything. They're not going to take your Social Security. They can't take your pension. They're not going to take your home. They're not going to take your car. You're going to be okay. If you ever start worrying like this, and I say this to any of our clients, if you ever start worrying again, you pick up the stupid phone and you call us, no matter how often. That's what we're here for. That's why I started Helps, so that seniors with debt could always have someone to call. You're our client ongoing, so you never have to worry about debt collectors bothering you again. And if you're susceptible to stress, call us. And after you talk to us for a few times, finally you're going to get through and you realize you're going to be okay. So I'm not worried about you calling us how many times you call. My pet peeve is if someone calls and they say, uh, I didn't want to bother you because I know you guys were really busy. That's we want you to call us. Okay. So that's what we're here for. We don't want you to worry, any of you. So, um, so this guy calls us age 61 on Social Security disability, getting just under $1,200 a month in Social Security, $9,000 in debt. He went to an attorney to file bankruptcy. You know what the attorney did? Told him to call Helps. You know, we don't. We occasionally have attorneys that refer clients to Helps, and that attorney did the exact right thing. When I started Helps back in 2012, I originally thought attorneys would be our number one source of clients. I went to National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys seminar, I mean their annual conference for about 3 or 4 or 5 years. Had a booth, told all these bankruptcy attorneys about Helps. I was sorely disappointed. There's a lot of attorneys they either file bankruptcy for someone or they don't do anything. They never referred them to us, so I stopped going. But there are attorneys out there that find out that know about Helps that refer clients to us. More should, because actually there's very few seniors that really need to file bankruptcy. A lot of them can't afford to file bankruptcy. Of course, but if they sit home and don't do anything, the creditors can call and make their lives miserable. So that's what Helps does. Okay, so Marion says, the IRS sent me a collection bill for $800 owed. I'm on Social Security. Can they take my check to pay the IRS? I don't think it's going to happen. I'll explain why. Okay. The most the IRS would do if you owed money is they would send you a letter saying they intend to offset 15% of your Social Security for the debt you owe. But they wouldn't do that for 60 days. And that would give you time, Marion, to apply to the IRS to get on what's called currently not collectible status. However, I don't think you're going to need to worry about that because I think the IRS system is set up that they know that your only income is Social Security, uh, and it's such a small amount, they're not going to try to set off 15% of your Social Security. It's not going to happen. So I mean, if you got the money and you want to pay it, great. But if you can't afford it, we don't worry about it. Currently not collectible status was set up so that seniors with lower incomes, like $3,500 or less if you're a couple, or $2,500 or less thereabouts if you're single, could get on currently not collectible status and not have to pay the IRS their taxes. Now, if you owe the state any taxes, the state can't touch your Social Security or your pension. It's protected. So no, Marion, you're not going to need to worry about the $800 you owe to the IRS. If you want to pay it, great. We should pay our taxes if we can, But the government doesn't want you to go without food, medicine, or basic needs to pay IRS taxes. Can't afford it? Don't worry about it. Okay? Okay, I have a question. My ex-husband wants to know, do you have to have Social Security to help him because he has a lot of doctor bills right now and he's getting pension and disability? No. We help a lot of people that aren't getting Social Security, they're getting just disability. And no, you don't. You can have any form of retirement or about ready to get that retirement and be part of helps. Okay? If we have 5 clients that call us, maybe 1 out of 5 is being sued, 3 or 4 out of 5 are behind on their bills, and creditors are harassing, and 1 out of 5 are completely current on their debt. It doesn't matter who you are. You can enroll in helps. 855-435-7787. Call right now if you want. Talk to one of our paralegals or attorneys, and they're going to go over this information. They're going to ask you some basic questions about your finances, and we're going to save that information. Sometimes you might be calling 2 or 3 or 4 times, and then before you decide to enroll in helps, it's kind of up to you. So Tater asked, I talked to my neighbor about helps. She has looks like 50,000 in credit card debt. I don't know how she's been doing it with payments and living expenses on her small amount of Social Security income. Well, I don't either. It could be that she's digging a hole and digging it deeper. Okay. She's using the credit cards to borrow money from the credit cards to keep paying the credit card debt. And at some point, the hole will get so deep, Tater, that she won't be able to throw the dirt out of the hole anymore. It'll start crumbling in. In other words, there won't be any credit available for her to keep current on those credit card payments. Now, if you're in that situation, you don't need to keep digging the hole deeper. You can get a hold of us and can roll in helps. Um, hold on here. Uh, you can get a hold of us and um, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Someone called me on my cell phone. I got it linked into my headset. Um, yeah, call us and get a hold of us, and you can stop paying the credit card debt. You don't have to be behind. Okay, when you finally realize it's just not going to work anymore, stop. So Rhonda asked, is money awarded for personal injury subject to creditors? Do they have a right to that money? My only income is Social Security. Probably not. It depends on the state. Um, Virtually every state protects a personal injury award to one degree or another. Okay. Sometimes the entire amount is protected. Sometimes it depends on the state, but it's almost always protected. I've never seen anyone in my entire practice ever lose money from a personal injury award to a creditor that had a judgment against them. Okay. First of all, they'd have to sue you and have a judge, and then they have to know where the money is at. So no, I don't think you're going to need to worry about that, Rhonda. So this person calls us from Arizona. There we go. They get Social Security and SNAP, which is food stamps. I had a stroke recently and can no longer earn a wage. They rent and have a car that they can't. She needs to surrender. Maybe she can't drive it anymore, or I don't know. Has auto pay set up for the car. and they have credit card debt and they're being harassed by the creditors. This is a note from our paralegal. We read her what we did, answered her questions, sent her some emails, taught her about how to surrender the car. She stopped the auto payments. She's waiting for them to pick up the car. She enrolled in helps. That's not unusual. People have a medical condition where they can't work anymore, and maybe they realize they can't afford the car. Maybe they can't drive anymore. You can stop payments on the car. Maybe you're saddled with a car payment you really can't afford. Maybe you owe $30,000 on the car. It's only worth $15,000. Payment's $600 or $700 a month. You can't pay it. You can stop making the payment on the car and let it go back. They're eventually going to sell the car. You're probably going to owe money on the car because they're going to sell for less than what you owe. You're going to get what's called a deficiency notice, which is a bill from the lender telling you how much you owe. If you're a member of HELPS, you get us that notice. We're going to send a cease and desist letter out to that lender. They're going to leave you alone. Now, maybe you have a car payment you can't afford. You can let it go back, and maybe you've got another car that's free and clear, and you got transportation. So we'll go. We talk to people when we talk to HELPS. There's one of the things we talk about. Are you buying a car? How much do you owe on it? What's it worth? And so if there's a problem with the car, we can go over and give you some information on that that's going to be helpful for you. Okay. Tater says, I think injury award settlement award money is exempt because that money is awarded for care and recovery expenses. Yeah, a lot of times that's the reason why under state law it's exempt. But it depends on the state. Like I said, it shouldn't be an issue. If you got a question, you can call us. We can go over it with you. So this person contacts us and they say, our um, our pensions protected, federal and state, or just Social Security and federal pensions, not state. And then they say, then they finally get down to what they really want to know: is a state teacher's retirement pension protected? Your pension is protected no matter where it is or where it came from. Don't worry about it. It's going to be protected. Now the issue is it protected once it goes into your bank account? Well, as long as a federal retirement is going into your bank account like Social Security, then it doesn't matter what other monies are going in there. As long as the balance is less than twice the amount of your federal pension or your Social Security, twice the amount you get each month, that sum is protected. If you happen to have more than that in there, the excess could be held up by a garnishment in the event someone were to sue you and get a judgment, but you could file paperwork to get that released, challenge the garnishment or claim of exemption. So your pension is protected no matter where it came from. Okay? What if a person gets an inheritance or winnings from a casino or from a casino? Come from a contest or a casino? Can a creditor attach their hands to that in any way from a senior? Well, yeah, it's possible. Those monies might not be exempt or protected. I don't know how a creditor would find out about it. Okay. I don't see, and maybe you get a big enough inheritance, you can pay everyone off, so have plenty of money. I've told this story before. When I was doing bankruptcy, I was sitting in my office, and all of a sudden, out in the waiting room, I heard someone screaming, just ah! It was a screaming joy. I got up on my chair and I walked out to the reception room, and a lady had just had a scratch card from the little state lotto ticket, and she'd won $30,000. Okay, and she was so excited. Well, she came back into my office and we talked over. She later did file bankruptcy. Okay, she used the $30,000 to get her teeth fixed and some other stuff. Okay, but it solved a lot of problems. So, yeah, I'll never forget that. So Mary says, I get funds from my homeowner's insurance deposited to my account for repairs roof. Can judgment used to abscond with those? Shouldn't be a problem. You don't even need to worry about this unless someone gets a judgment against you. Okay, and then they'd have to know where you bank. So you can call and talk to us in those cases. Yeah, but normally, insurance proceeds for something like that are going to be protected under state law. But a lot of times it's a good idea to prevent there from being a problem in the first place by avoiding putting that money where it might be accessible by a creditor. But you don't need to worry about it unless someone has sued you and has a judgment. Okay. And a lot of times people, they're worried about this and no one has even sued them and they probably will never get sued. Okay. So this guy, I'll put this one here. He says, how about New Mexico? We, we are always ignored and overlooked. Poor New Mexico. He thinks he's ignored and overlooked. How do we fare if you're a senior? It's the same no matter what state you're in. Okay? I don't care if you're in North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't want to offend any state here. I don't care. Alaska, Maine, Rhode Island, whatever state. These laws are federal laws. They protect you. You don't need to, and if it's even New Mexico, you're even protected in New Mexico. Um, we represent people that are living in the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, even guys on a Greek island in the Mediterranean. Your income is protected. Okay. 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 This person contacts from Texas, seeking legal information for a low-income widow regarding debt collection of a personal loan. They're supposed to go into Justice of the Peace Court here. It says that the plaintiff, which is a collection agency, strongly urged unacceptable payments terms and has requested proof of Social Security payments to verify hardship claim. The Justice of the Peace Court has been rescheduled for September 2025. You don't need to. If this person were to talk to, we're going to talk to them. We're going to say you don't need to go to court. You live in Texas. They can get a judgment against you. Your Social Security is protected. We'd send a letter to the attorney who sued you, letting him know that your income's protected. See, a debt collector, including an attorney that sued you, they don't have to tell you what your legal rights are. They don't have to tell you about your income being protected. They're not obligated to tell you that. They're not. All they want to do is have you make payments to them. Sometimes when they answer the phone, they're going to say, we're a debt collector. The only, any information we obtain can be used for that purpose. They're not going to tell you your rights, but you're going to hear that from me, from Helps. So you don't need to talk to them. We tell this, if this person enrolls in Helps, we'll send a letter to the attorney that sued her, let him know that her income is protected and she doesn't need to, we're going to call her, explain why she doesn't need to worry, why she doesn't need to go to court, none of this stuff. Which leads us to this next one. This is like New Mexico one. It says, so do you have to go to court anyway in Indiana? Guys, people trust you and want to make sure, does this, what I'm talking about, apply in the state where I live? And this person's from Indiana. Yeah, it doesn't matter what state you're in. Indiana's protected too. If you get sued and your income's protected, you don't need to go to court in Indiana. They can get a judgment against you. Okay? They can't collect from you. So Savannah's asking, do the protections apply to small claims court? I don't care what court it is, Savannah. Small claims, big claims, they could sue you for $1 billion. They can't touch your Social Security or pension. It doesn't matter. It's protected, period. Okay. So you don't have to go to court. Okay. They can get, when one of our clients get sued in small claims is a court where uh, if it's an amount under a certain amount of money, that it's kind of like Judge Judy. You just go yourself. You don't have to have an attorney. And it doesn't mean, now, if you don't owe the money and you want to defend yourself, you can do that. But if you owe the money, you can just ignore it. They get a judgment. We'll send a letter to the whoever sued you, let him know that your income's protected. A lot of times, attorneys technically aren't supposed to, represent people in small claims court. But if it's a corporation, which all these collection companies are, it's legal for an attorney to represent the corporation in small claims court. So they get around the attorney issue. But it doesn't matter if it's an attorney or not. Your income's protected. You don't need to worry. Um, Savannah, don't need to worry. And anyone here, if you have a question or you're worried or have more questions, be sure and call us. Subscribe to our channel. Press the like button. We want to get the word out more about this stuff. So Leela asks, can I not make my monthly payment to your office this month? Can I resume next month? I'm out of work for. Yeah, absolutely. Call us, and with our bookkeeping, we'll make it work. We don't we don't we don't kick people out. We make it work for whatever your situation is. We don't want you to worry. Okay. The only reason we charge is we need some money to pay some staff. Got big postage bills, phone calls, things like that. Then we get a lot of people who think they know what they're talking about. So this is from one of our videos. He says, after we talked about, he says, okay, the IRS will tax you on any credit card debt that was forgiven. It's considered income on you, and you need to pay taxes. I did when that creditor reduced my debt in a debt consolidation program. Well, whatever happened to you doesn't mean it's going to happen to everyone, and you probably didn't need to pay the taxes, but I'll explain why. Okay. Uh, if you don't pay a debt and it's written off by a creditor, they can send to the IRS what's called a 1099-C, which is a form letting the IRS know that you didn't pay a debt, and that should be attributed to you as income upon which you're required to pay taxes. Okay. If it's over $600. A lot of times a creditor won't send that in, but if they send that in, is that going to be a problem? In almost every case, no. Why? Well, if your only income is Social Security, you're not even required to file tax returns. And you can even have some money more than Social Security, you're not required to file tax returns. So is the IRS going to ever follow up on the 1099-C? No, because their computer system lets them know that your income is minimal. If they tried to collect that tax, you could get on currently not collectible status. So just because you don't pay a debt, even if it's $30, $40, $50,000 worth of debt, it's not going to create a tax problem for you. I did a live YouTube 2 or 3 years ago with my former partner. I guess he's still my partner in a way, Rex Danes, on YouTube Live. You can, on February 9th, a couple years ago. You can go back and look at that. Okay, where we talk detail about that. So no, you're not going to need to worry. Yeah. Okay. Roberto asks, I live in Arkansas. You're my neighbor now, Roberto. I'm temporarily in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm married, 5 kids. My primary residence has a lot of equity, but the credit cards are suing me. Can they take my equity? Well, okay. Um, I don't know off the top of my head what the homestead exemption is in Arkansas, but I assume you have equity over and above that. So if you own the home with your wife or your spouse, that means you own it together. Okay. If you kick the bucket before your wife, then if someone were to sue you and get a judgment at your death, the property would go to your wife. The judgment lien goes away. And if you own it with your wife and the judgment's just against you, they can't go after your wife. They can't go after you. They can't take your home. Even if you own the home and the judgment's against both of you, it's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to go after your home. They don't do it for a lot of different reasons. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that. We have videos that talk about that in detail. Now, if they were, which they won't, there's things that can be done to stop it, but I don't like to talk about that because you're asking me, well, Eric, if the Martians come for dinner on Saturday night, I know what to give them for dinner, but I'm not sure what to serve them for dessert. Can you tell me what to serve them for dessert? Or it's like asking me, well, Eric, if I go to, I'm worried about going to Circle K on Friday night at 10:07 p.m. about getting hit by a drunk driver at 10:07 p.m. exactly. What do I do? Well, we don't live our lives that way, so don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And you can always call and talk to us, Roberto. Okay? But I'm not making fun of anyone here. Don't get me wrong. I get this question all the time. It's probably one of my most common questions. So your home's going to be okay. Okay, this was a pretty long one from someone contacting us, but I kind of distilled it. So I hope this message finds you well. I'm well. They live in New Jersey. They're currently unemployed. They can't get another job. I don't own a home or a car. I can't afford to pay Chase, Citibank, Wells Fargo, and Amex. They closed her accounts, or his accounts. Doesn't matter. And it says, I've started receiving collection of letters. I'm unsure of the best course of action and wanted to reach out for guidance. I'm particularly concerned about these possibility of these collection accounts taking me to court, especially since I know that New Jersey, when large amounts are owed, legal action is often pursued. New Jersey is no different than any other place. Doesn't Your income's protected. Additionally, I can't read that. At this point, I'm most worried about the potential for legal action from the collection agency. I would greatly appreciate any advice or assistance you can offer in helping me understand my options. I also want to know how to become a member or take advantage of the support you give. What a nice little email. I mean, what she didn't say, which I'm assuming that she's getting Social Security or protected income. Let's assume that this person is. And they can't pay these credit cards that have been canceled, and they're worried about getting sued. When they call, we're going to interview them, talk to them about what their financial situation is, what they get in income. We're going to explain to them that their Social Security is protected, so is their pension, and that these creditors can't really collect from her. Even if she's sued, she's not going to have to go to court. And she doesn't need to worry. And that she can call us as often as she needs to. If she decides to enroll in help, she's going to give us the creditors to whom she owes money to. We're going to send them a cease and desist letter, and they're going to leave her alone. She doesn't have to worry about the, quote, potential for legal action from collection agencies. Doesn't matter if they sue you or not. They can't collect from you. Okay? And yeah, so that's what we do. So Rita's asking, she says, my husband is still getting billed years after they repossessed the car for the remainder of his leased car payment or whatever it was. His only income is Social Security. Doesn't need to pay it. Doesn't need to worry about it. If he's a mirror of helps, he gives it to us. We'll send him a letter. They're going to leave him alone. Okay. His only income is Social Security. They can't. If they sued him, they might legally be able to do that depending on how old the debt is. But if they sued him, wouldn't need to go to court. He doesn't need to worry about it at all, nor any other debt that he owes either. If he if he's strapped with debt and he's having difficulty paying that debt, he can use the money for his food and medicine, and for basic needs. He doesn't need to worry about this debt. So Janie asked a question that's a good one that we hear a lot. Uh, do I stop payments on the creditors first and then you send the letters, or wait till I'm behind? We're not going to make you wait till you're behind. So what I do is I hold up my hand. Maybe 1 out of 5 clients in helps is being sued. 3 or 4 are behind and they're being harassed. And 1 out of 5 is completely current on everything. It doesn't matter where you are, Janie. Doesn't matter where you are. Yeah, if you find that you're in a position where I just can't do it anymore and you're current on everything, you don't have to wait for the creditors to be calling you and harassing you before you enroll in helps. I wouldn't do that to you. Okay. See, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act does apply to debt collectors, not original creditors. In 7 states, it applies to original creditors. But if we send a letter out to even an original creditor, no matter where you live, they're not going to call you anymore. That's not their practice. It might take them 2 to 4 weeks to get our letter and process it. They may still send you a bill. You can just throw it in the garbage, or you can do a change of address to have the bill sent to your name, care of helps, and our address. Once you're a member, you don't need to worry about whether you're current or behind. Okay. Okay. This has to do with this next question. Well, it's a little bit different. They wrote in and they asked, "Do I need to tell the creditors that I can no longer pay them?" No, no, you don't need to do that. No, you just stop paying them. If you call them on the phone and say, I can no longer pay you," that's like saying, "Okay, start whipping me on the back." Because you're going to say, "Well, you need to pay us. You need to make arrangements." But you do not need to call them and put yourself through that harassment from a debt collector, because they're not going to want to hear you telling them that you can't pay them. They're going to say, "Well, maybe you need to talk to your brother or sister or your friend or neighbor, or maybe you need to take, No, you do not need to tell them that you're not going to pay them. You just stop paying them. Okay? I don't want to make light of things here. I know these are serious questions and serious things. So. But, sometimes if I put a little humor in it, maybe you won't be so worried, because I don't want you to worry. Okay? So Angie asked, LVNV funding took my debt from PayPal, has sued me, and generally they ignored all previous helps letters. Kaiser's with me, and I just can't speak high enough of her court case. Yeah. So Happy says, Eric, I get harassed and gaslighted after putting up your information. I notice that the area on aging comes here on a regular basis. I'm thankful for the information you give. Which of the 7 states? That's not a good question to ask me. I can't do it off the top of my head. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what state you're in. When we send a cease and desist letter, even if it's not one of those 7 states, they normally just stop bothering you. They may send you a bill, but they're not going to they're not going to call you. Okay. Now the exception would be maybe a payday loan, a high interest outfit, um, someone like that. So this person contacts us, I don't know where, but here they say, I'm 74 years old living alone on Social Security, which is a little over $1,000 a month. I'm on Section 8, which does help. Section 8 is a federal program that helps with your housing. You pay approximately a quarter to a third of your income for your housing. There's a waiting period because I pay everything with my debit card, but I want to try to build up my credit score again. So I applied to my bank, and I pay my bills on time, and I have a very old car which I owe nothing on, needs lots of repairs. Uh, um, my concern about my credit score could hamper me from moving and finding another place. If you're on Section 8 and have low credit score, could that affect your chance of being denied and find another place? It shouldn't. I heard it could. You can hear a lot of things that aren't true. I'm so angry with my bank now, and I'm going to open up a savings account with the credit union for low income and apply for a credit there. Eventually, I will transfer my direct deposit, leave my bank. So, okay, so here's the deal. If you want to, you can rebuild your credit. Phelps has a program, 7 steps to a 720 credit score. We pay a company called 720 Credit Score to give that to our clients after you've been part of Helps for 90 days. Uh, a lot of times our clients really don't care about rebuilding their credit, or when they enroll in Helps, they may have a credit card they're current on, they want to keep that. They can keep that. But if you want to rebuild your credit, you can. After you've been a part of Helps for 90 days, we'll give you a program on how to do that. Now, as far as renting is concerned, we do have a form letter. We call it a landlord letter that we'll send to a prospective landlord. We'll send to a client that they can give to a prospective landlord. Even if you're not a client, we'll give it to anyone that says, this person gets Social Security. All their Social Security is protected. They can't be taken from them. Even if they have negative entries on their credit, this money will always be available to pay rent. And a lot of times that will help you. We tell you to give that to a prospective landlord before you pay an application fee. And then they could tell you, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, go and pay your application fee. Um, or if they say, well, we have corporate policies. If you have bad credit, we may not be able to rent to you. Then you can avoid paying an application fee that would be a waste. Okay. Thank you, Kathy. So this person contacts us from, it looks like Alaska. They get about $12.50 in Social Security, and they get a small tribal dividend. Not a lot. They may get a part-time job in the future. We reviewed what her protections were for wages. She has a mobile home on land, has a car outright. Looks like she's adding her daughter's name to the home as a joint tenant with her. Her credit cards are currently with a debt consolidation company. She's going to exit them. Well, we would have asked her, if you're listening to me and you're signed up with a debt management or debt settlement company, the question I have for you is, when you enrolled with them, did they tell you, you really don't need our help. All your income is protected. Your Social Security and pension, no one can take it. No, they didn't tell you that. With the rare exceptions, they don't tell seniors that. Instead, they sign them up, sometimes putting people in utter poverty, making a payment they don't need to make. So she's canceling with that debt consolidation company. Says we read paragraphs, quoted our fees, answered questions, and she enrolled in Helps. Don't need to worry. It's going to be okay. Well, look at the time. Brian says the same thing. You're right, Taya. I agree. This hour is the fastest hour in my week. It goes really fast. 720 credit score, the highest a person can get now? No, it's not the highest, but I think 800 or something like that, 850 or something like that. But that just happens to be the name of the company. 720 is pretty high. They can go higher than that. Okay. So Kathy says, you're very welcome, Eric. We would all be running around like wild people if we're not for you and helps because we're all paid our bills on time. And when you retire, it gets worse. It does. I don't want anyone running around wild. I don't want anyone worried. So if you're listening to me and you're not a member of Helps and you got questions, be sure and call us. If you're a member of Helps and you're worried, you can call us too. We don't care who you are. If you're a senior getting protected income and you're worried about this and you have questions, call us no matter how often. That's what we're here for. Helps was designed so our help would be ongoing. It wouldn't be just one time. So this person contacts us from California. Age is 70. They get $1,700 in Social Security and $400 in a pension. They pay $800 in rent. They stopped paying their credit cards about 3 months ago. They just couldn't do it anymore. Once again, they signed up for debt consolidation, but they stopped it on their own after 2 months. They finally they couldn't pay it. Yeah, I know. But once again, when they enrolled with debt consolidation, did they tell them that their income was protected? No, because they're scammers. Most of them are. Yeah, they commit fraud. Fraud. When you don't tell someone something that's financially important for that person for your own financial benefit, like withholding information about to a senior that their income is protected, they don't need to pay a debt, so that they will enroll with you and pay you. That's a form of fraud. That's what they do. Person has a disease. We went over the protections and what we do, and they enrolled in Helps. So, yeah, it looks like the next one I have is pretty long. It will probably go beyond the rest of the time, so I'm going to call it quits here for now. Like to appreciate all the chat today, all your good questions. Okay. If you have any more questions, you be sure and call us. If you're looking at this later, you can call us. Um, I don't know when we first, you know, we answer the questions up to nearly 7 o'clock on Eastern time and start answering questions about, uh, 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. So, I mean, you can usually reach us. Okay. So everyone have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow, same time. God bless. Bye.